Government submits public sentiment report to Beijing. A proposed ban on certain nutritional and health claims for infant formula products. And controversy over a Taiwanese flag-raising ceremony in Washington.
Hello and a very good evening. The Government Task Force on Political Reform has submitted a 220-page public sentiment report to the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. Pro-democracy groups say the document fails to truly reflect the actual situation. Stephanie Choi has more details.
The document, entitled Report on the Recent Community and Political Situation in Hong Kong, states the divergent opinions that have emerged since the National People's Congress Standing Committee announced a political reform framework for the SAR. It contains a chronological record of developments since the decision was announced on August 31st last year, including the class boycott by students leading up to the Occupy movement, clashes between police and occupiers, along with voices both for and against the two sides, the meeting between student leaders and government officials in October, and the end of the 79-day occupation of roads after bailiffs and police moved in to clear protest sites. The document also includes annexes detailing the NPC Standing Committee's decision and events related to constitutional development, as well as appendices comprising of statements on political reform made by various groups and the findings of relevant opinion polls. The government concluded by saying that it is the common aspiration of the central government, the SAR government and Hong Kong people to implement universal suffrage for the 2017 chief executive election in accordance with the Basic Law and the interpretation and decisions of the NPC Standing Committee. The report came under fire from pan-democratic lawmakers.
It's a really public sentiment report that have no sentiment at all, especially no expression of the very strong sentiment for real democracy in Hong Kong, very strong sentiment against the National People's Congress August 31st decision. They have omitted a very, very important fact, the demand for stepping down of C.Y. Leung.
We will veto the resolution put forward to the LegCo based on the resolutions by the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress.
Student leader Lester Shum called the report meaningless.
What's the way to solve this political reform problem? Is the Hong Kong government or the Beijing government to face this problem directly, but not listing out the facts that we can see on the magazine, on the news.
Meanwhile, Liberal Party lawmaker James Tien, who had himself called on the CE to resign, welcomed the report.
I think if the government put in their own view about what happened and the reason why it should or it should not happen, then I think the pan-democrats will have even a stronger view, which is a view of objection. So I think it's only fair enough that the government can only state the facts.
Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
The government will launch the second round of political reform consultation tomorrow. Today, Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying called on members of the public to express their views in a legal, rational and practical manner. Speaking before the weekly Executive Council meeting, Leung said he hopes the public will take the opportunity to reach a consensus that is based on the Basic Law and relevant decisions of the National People's Congress Standing Committee. Emphasizing the rule of law in Hong Kong, he said previous experience proved that no illegal or disruptive acts can force the SAR or central governments into accepting something that doesn't comply with the Basic Law. On a different subject, Leung said Hong Kong will work closely with Beijing on preparing for a Shenzhen-Hong Kong Stock Connect after Premier Li Keqiang put forward the idea yesterday. The government has launched a public consultation on a proposed ban against certain nutritional and health claims on the packaging and advertisements of infant formula products. But the administration remains open-minded on whether to put into effect a similar ban on formula products for older children. Owen Fong reports.
many brands of baby formulas claim to contain nutrients that are beneficial to infants' health and development. But according to the Food and Health Bureau, these claims could mislead parents into thinking that using such products is better than breastfeeding. It proposes to ban nutritional claims on the packaging and advertisements of formula products designed for infants under 12 months old, also called infant formulas. For example, saying that a formula contains dietary fiber wouldn't be allowed.
Milk formula or some of the food for infants are the sole range of food for infants. So therefore it is really important that we make sure that these infant formula or infant foods are regulated properly.
The government also wants to ban manufacturers from claiming that their formula products and foods for young children can reduce the risk of disease. That's because those products are designed for meeting nutritional needs rather than preventing diseases. As to whether manufacturers can associate nutritional and health claims with formula products aimed at children above 1 year old or follow-up formulas, the administration is open to suggestions. It has launched a 3-month public consultation on the matter. Sharon Choi, Vice Chair Lady of the Hong Kong Breastfeeding Mothers Association, believes the government's proposal is too lenient on manufacturers. She says many consumers cannot distinguish the difference between infant and follow-up formulas. She's urged the government to ban nutritional and health claims on all formula products to ensure young children are properly protected. But some members of the public do not think a blanket ban is necessary. This woman says consumers themselves need to take the initiative to find out more about the products. This woman says the government needs to strike a balance between commercial interests of the manufacturers and protecting consumers. The Hong Kong Infant and Young Child Nutrition Association, a representative of 6 formula manufacturers, says it supports the government's proposal. But it added that any regulation should be transparent and follow international standards. Owen Fung, TVB News.
Well, the U.S. State Department said it wasn't given advance notice about a New Year's Day Taiwanese flag-raising ceremony in Washington that's angered Beijing. The ceremony was at the Twin Oaks residence of Taipei's representative to the United States. It was the first of its kind since the U.S. switched diplomatic recognition from Taipei to Beijing 36 years ago. Beijing reacted angrily, calling on the U.S. to respect the One China policy. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying called on Washington to prudently and properly handle any issues related to Taiwan. A U.S. State Department spokeswoman said Washington didn't know about the flag-raising ceremony and stressed nothing has changed concerning its One China policy.
We did not know about the January 1st flag raising at Twin Oaks in advance. The ceremony is not consistent with U.S. policy. We remain fully committed to the U.S. One China policy based on the 3 communiques and the Taiwan Relations Act. No U.S. government personnel attended the event in any capacity.
Away from Washington now, and in New York, 2 policemen were shot and wounded overnight, only weeks after 2 officers were shot dead in their patrol car. Police officials said the officers were responding to a reported robbery in the Bronx when the shooting happened. Despite getting wounded, their injuries are not life-threatening. No suspect has been taken into custody so far. The incident not only follows the shooting deaths, but comes just after last weekend's funeral for the 2nd officer killed in that ambush attack. And elsewhere in the United States, the jury selection process has begun in the trial of the man accused of helping to organize and carry out the 2013 Boston Marathon terror attack. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev could get the death penalty if convicted of killing 3 people and wounding more than 260 others in the incident. Jury selection for the high-profile trial of Boston bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev began under tight security in the city. Tsarnaev, flanked by his lawyers, sat at a table at the front of the jury assembly room. He's accused of planning and helping to carry out the bombings which left 3 people dead and more than 260 wounded at the Boston Marathon nearly 2 years ago. Prosecutors say he worked with his elder brother Tamerlan, who was eventually killed in a gun battle with police. Legal analysts say given the amount of evidence against Dzhokhar, his lawyers will focus more on persuading the jury to spare his life.
Guilt does not seem to be much of an issue because it appears as though the prosecutors have amassed a trove of evidence, tons of evidence against Tsarnaev. So everything really will boil down to the death penalty phase. So that's the number one objective for the defense, to spare Tsarnaev's life.
Over the next 3 days, around 1,200 people will be summoned to be considered as potential jurors.
This is going to be a long trial. Jury selection, I imagine, will take at least a month. We may not hear the beginning of opening statements or testimony until February. I wouldn't anticipate any type of resolution until the spring.
12 jurors and 6 alternates will eventually be selected out of the pool of jury candidates. Court officials expect testimony in the trial to begin on January 26th.
Indonesia has expanded the search area for the missing AirAsia plane in the Java Sea because strong ocean currents keep dragging the wreckage away. Bad weather is hampering the search for 125 people still unaccounted for, as well as efforts to reach the wreckage and black boxes beneath the sea. Sonia Otero reports.
The search for bodies and plane parts of AirAsia Flight 8501 has entered its 9th day. A hospital in Indonesia's second biggest city, Surabaya, confirms 37 bodies of passengers and crew have been recovered. But experts believe most of the missing people are trapped in the body of the aircraft. So far, a total of 13 victims have been identified, and forensics experts from Australia and Singapore are pitching in to help.
It's a situation that the DVI members will be able to not only participate in the procedures and also observe the techniques of the IMP and also our colleagues from Singapore.
Indonesian officials are certain they've spotted the tail and parts of the plane's fuselage on the Java seafloor.
Akan dilakukan tambahan.
Because strong currents keep scattering the wreckage, the search area has been expanded eastward. The latest plane parts found include single and entire rows of seats and other debris that's being scrutinized for clues to explain the aircraft's demise. The most critical part still missing is the tail section of the Airbus A320, where the black box recorders are housed. That's what U.S. Navy divers from the USS Fort Worth hope to find by scouring the ocean with this sophisticated sonar device.
This is our C-scan. This uses different kilohertz of sonar to give us an image on the sea bottom. We can find things as small as a golf ball or, of course, something as big as an airplane using different kilohertz bands and our swaths.
As it turns out, 62 Indonesian airlines were placed on a European aviation blacklist just 17 days before the AirAsia crash. Plus, a United Nations probe rated Indonesia's airworthiness below the global average. Still, these Muslim clerics believe in the power of prayer. They hitched a ride to the crash site where they prayed for a successful search operation and that all victims are found. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
And still to come in our news tonight. Security concern over new smart Hong Kong ID cards. A SpaceX plan to launch a reusable booster rocket hits a snag. And in Israel, an emu shocks drivers on the road.
Margot El-Harasi has 6 U.S. drones under her control, headed for London. We need to find these people, and fast.
Unless President Heller surrenders himself to me, thousands of people in London will die.
How is this possible?
My father needs you now more than ever.
Get out of there right now.
Tonight, 24. Live another day at 10:40 on Pearl.
To prevent avian flu, you should avoid touching birds, poultry, or their droppings. And wash hands frequently. Make sure that all foods from poultry, including eggs, are thoroughly cooked before eating. When traveling outside Hong Kong, avoid visiting poultry markets and farms. Do not bring any birds or poultry back to Hong Kong. If you develop fever and respiratory symptoms after your trip, wear a mask and consult your doctor explaining your travel.